Okay, we'll start the recording. All right. Let's recite Namo Tassa 3 times. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Okay, so today we are continuing the book reading on Venerable Mahākaccāna. Last week, we kickstart this chapter on his story, and we read about the Venerable's samsaric background. So, how he, in many, 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 many lifetimes ago, made the aspiration during the Buddha Padumuttara's time that he wanted to be reborn at the time of a future Buddha, and then he made a lot of offerings to the Buddha of that time, and he also subsequently in his later births, we read also about um, how he was reborn in, the different type of rebirths that he had. So we read all that. Very brief, not a lot about Venerable Mahākaccāna in terms of his previous lives. But nevertheless, there was no doubt that he played a very important role in the dispensation of the Buddha Gautama. And he was foremost in Doctrinal Exposition. And we didn't read the full suttas, but we very briefly touched upon the suttas in the Majjhima Nikaya, where Venerable Mahākaccāna was sought out by the bhikkhus after the Buddha gave a very brief discussion. And then, the Buddha, when he doesn't get any response or he doesn't get any questions, he will retire to his quarters, and then the bhikkhus will go, okay, like in today's modern day and age, it's like, what just happened? And so then they would then collectively go to seek advice from Venerable Mahākaccāna. Yeah, so amongst the more famous Majjhima Nikaya suttas was number 18, the Madhupindika Sutta, the Honey Ball Sutta, was the famous one. And also Udesa Vibhanga Sutta, also pretty famous. And then also two others, one of which was very similar to the Brahmins of Sala, the Sutta, I think it's 41 or something, that Bhante Dhammagavesi had read for us a couple of weeks ago, which talks about how we can create the enough meritorious actions or merit in order to support our future. In the suttas, of course, it talks about, because in the context of the question that was set leading into the sutta, and the questions that came were from the Brahmins in Sala, the place called Sala, and they asked about, what does it take for someone to have a positive rebirth after this life. And of course, then the Buddha explained based on rebirth after this life, the criteria, the precepts, of course. So very briefly, not killing or harming living beings, not taking anything not freely given, no sexual misconduct, no telling lies, gossip, slander, or divisive speech, and harsh speech, and then also um, uh, no covetousness because that's related to greed, no ill will because that's related to hatred, and also having the right view or harmonious perspective. And in the suttas, it was explained in detail what that means. But I mean, if you want to summarize very quickly in brief, then you can summarize it that way. But we don't have to just think of in terms of, I tend to like think of, a large part of our practice is daily life practice. And so in a lot of the parts of the sutta, we are reminded to practice in terms of present moment, because every single moment's actions, whether through thought, speech, or action, bodily action, will affect what happens next. And so we can also think of those cultivation of keeping the precepts and being not covetous, not having ill will, and having the right view as beneficial and supportive of our current life, our current existence as it is, where we are. And so I'm reminded, especially on covetousness, because uh, it's so easy, with today's modern day and age. I don't know what other people think, but we are surrounded by, I mean, social media, TV. Even if we don't watch the TV, let's say, we drive out to the road and we are bombarded with advertisements everywhere, billboards and whatnot, even if we are, old school and we read the papers, let's say there's marketing everywhere. And so it's almost like a bombardment of uh, messages related to, you know, almost as though going against that idea of being not coveting, not wanting, not, that guy, my neighbor is driving a fancier car than me, I want to have that car too, right? And we find it modern day, I think more and more difficult it is to practice. Having said that, it's doable. It is possible. It's just like the when we're using the 6 hours in our formal practice, in the same way we can use the 6 hours in our daily reflections, right? The moment that thought occurs, then we go, that thought pop up again, recognize that thought pop up again, release, relax, re-smile, and return to whatever it is that we're doing in that daily activity. So it can be applied in many different ways, and it's very different from covetousness. I think I've learned there is a fine line between covetousness and wanting to get better at what we do, which is like being ambitious. And, I remember Bhante Vimalaramsa used to say there's nothing wrong with wanting to, um, work for, having a good life or, earning some money. There's nothing to do that. That's not, see, and because it's a fine line, there's a big misconception. I had that misconception for a long time that um, wanting to be rich is a bad thing, because that idea that covetousness uh, is a fine line. It's so as long as we are, and here is where intention is important. So as long as we have the right intentions, as long as we Don't take things personal, coming back to harmonious perspective. As long as we are doing things that, the Buddha mentioned before in the rules, right? Whatever action, thought, speech, or through bodily action we do, does it harm ourselves? Does it harm the other party? So there's four, right? If it harms ourselves and it harms the other party where we're doing that transaction, whether it's business or service or whatever it is, then we don't do it. If it is harming ourselves, but it's benefiting the other party, we also don't do it. If it is harming the other party in the transaction, but it benefits us, we don't do it. And obviously, if it is, what did I say earlier? So if it is beneficial to both us and the other party, then we do it because it is for the benefit of ourselves and the other person. And over the weekend, I was listening to a book by a strategic coach, and he gave this definition of envy. He said, and he's very successful strategic coach, earns lots of money, and they do it in such a way that they believe that it can be done in a harmonious way, in a way where we give more than we expect a return, and business is based on cultivating relationships, like long-term relationships rather than transactional transactional kind of business, and when I listened to that book, it reminded me of, again, Bhante Vimalaramsi. In one of his talks, he said, a lot of people don't understand, um, when we talk about investments, let's say, sorry, I'm diverging a little bit from Venerable Mahākaccāna, but I am reminded again, when I was listening to this book, I was reminded again of Bhante Vimalaramsi when he said a lot of people don't, because prior to being a monk, Bhante Vimalaramsi used to be a builder. So he ran a business as a builder, building homes for people and stuff. So he understood what it was like to, he understood firsthand what it was like to provide a service for people, to build a business out of that, etc. And I remember this, he didn't mention it very often, but it was in one or two of the um, uh, talks that he gave. He said a lot of people don't understand and think of investments only in terms of buying, you know, like, we buy property or, investing in, putting let's say, money in the bank to watch it grow or compound, right? Like there's a saying, Warren Buffett says one of the eight wonders of the world is how money can be compounded over time, exponentially, growth, right? And Bhante Vimalaramsi said, the thing is, a lot of people in the world nowadays miss the point. It's actually relationships that we should invest in. That investing in relationships actually in the longer term is way more beneficial than just investing in, these popular ways of investment that we know. Having said that, I'm not saying that we totally don't invest in, the popular systems that we have. Obviously, we do that, yeah. But what I think both Bhante Vimalaramsi and also in this case strategic coaches Dan Sullivan and Joe Polish are saying is that it is important that we understand when we are in some sort of whether it's a service we provide, whether we're working for a company, whatever it is the relationships that we should invest in, because in the words of Joe Polish here, which is a strategic coach, um, them as they call themselves entrepreneurs or strategic coaches, after many, many years, so decades of training other entrepreneurs, they believe that relationships compound faster than money. I thought that was a very interesting uh, concept. I still need to test that out. I'm still testing that out. But the first time I heard Bhante Vimalaramsi mention this, it struck me quite a bit, and really helped me demystify, let's put it this way, demystify a lot of commonplace uh, beliefs or misconceptions about Buddhism and how to conduct a business or how to work or how to lead a daily life. I think Bhante Vimalaramsi and Venerable Sister Khema really helped to demystify a lot of the common misconceptions we have today. So very, very grateful for that. Okay, let's come back to Venerable Mahākaccāna. Right. So Mahākaccāna, yes, Venerable Mahākaccāna's conversion to the Dhamma. So in his last existence, when the Buddha Gautama appeared in the world, Kaccāna was born as the son of the chaplain in the city of Ujjeni, the capital of Avantī, to the southwest of the Middle Country. I think the Middle Country is where all these different smaller kingdoms that we see arising, mentioned a lot across the different suttas. So here will be the southwest Avantī. Modern day India, I think, I don't know. Let me quickly whip up Google Maps. I think yes, I think there are also some, I'm just off memory, yeah. Some ancient, okay, no, not Avani, but, it's probably called something else now. No. Never mind. Well, if people are interested, we can always search that up some other time. But it was a different country or city. Sorry, country, Avantī. And he was the son of the chaplain for that country. So his father's personal name was Tiritivacha. His mother's name was Chandima, and they were of the Kaccāna clan. So one of the oldest and most highly respected lines of Brahmins. And since he was born with a golden colored body, remember he made the aspiration a long time ago. His parents exclaimed that he had brought his name along with him at birth, and they named him Kañcana, which means golden. As a Brahmin and the son of the court chaplain, when Kañcana grew up, he studied the three Vedas, which are the traditional scriptures of the Brahmins. And after his father's death, he succeeded him in the position of court chaplain. Now, the king of Avantī at the time that Kaccāna became chaplain was Caṇḍappajjota, or Pajjota the Violent. Okay. And he was called thus because of his explosive and unpredictable temper. So when King Caṇḍappajjota heard that the Buddha had arisen in the world, he assembled his ministers and asked them to go and invite the Blessed One to visit Ujjeni. So the ministers all agreed that the only one who could handle this assignment was the chaplain, Kaccāna. Kaccāna, however, would go on this mission only under one condition, that he would be permitted to become a monk after meeting the Enlightened One. So the king, ready to accept any condition in exchange for a meeting with the Tathagata, gave his consent. So then Kaccāna set out, accompanied by 7 other courtiers. And when they met the master, he taught them the Dhamma. At the end of the discourse, Kaccāna and his 7 companions all attained arahantship together with the 4 analytical knowledges. And the Buddha granted them ordination simply by raising his hand. This was probably in the early stages of the Buddha's dispensation. That time was less, formal. It was simply by raising his hand and welcoming them into the Sangha with the words, "Come, bhikkhus." So the new bhikkhus, now the Venerable Mahākaccāna, then began to praise the splendors of Ujjeni to the Buddha. And the master realized that his new disciple wanted him to travel to his native land, but he replied that it would be sufficient for Kaccāna to go himself, as he was already capable of teaching the Dhamma and of inspiring confidence in the king. So in the course of this return journey, the party of monks arrived at a town named Thera, where they stopped to gather alms. And in that town lived 2 maidens, merchants' daughters of different families. So one girl was beautiful, lovely long hair, but both her parents had died and she lived in poverty, looked after by her governess. And the other girl was wealthy, but was afflicted with an illness that had caused her to lose her hair. So repeatedly, she had tried to persuade the poor girl to sell her hair to her so she could make a wig, but the poor girl had consistently refused. Okay. Now, when the poor girl saw Kaccāna and his fellow monks walking for alms, their bowls empty, she felt a sudden surge of faith and devotion arise in her toward the elder and decided to offer them alms. However, as she had no wealth, the only way she could obtain money was to buy provisions, was to sell her hair to the rich girl to buy the provisions. So this time, as the hair came to the rich girl already cut, she paid only 8 coins for it. And with these 8 coins, the poor girl had alms food prepared for 8 monks, using 1 coin for each portion. And after she had presented the alms as an immediate fruit of the meritorious deed, her full head of hair instantly grew back to its original length. So when Mahākaccāna arrived back in Ujjeni, he reported this incident to King Caṇḍappajjota. So the king had the girl conveyed to his palace and at once appointed her his chief queen. And from that time onward, the king greatly honored Mahākaccāna. And many people of Ujjeni who heard the elder preach gained faith in the Dhamma and went forth under him as monks. And thus the entire city became a single blaze of saffron robes blowing back and forth of the banner of sages. And the queen, who was exceedingly devoted to the elder, built for him a dwelling in the Golden Grove Park. And so says the Anguttara commentary, but the Pali Canon itself suggests that the Sangha was not as well established in Avantī as the commentator would lead us to believe. The evidence for this is in a story reported in the Mahāvāga of this is from the Vinaya Pitaka. So when this story opens, Mahākaccāna was dwelling in Avantī at his favorite residence, the Osprey's Haunt on Precipice Mountain. And so a lay disciple of his by the name of Sona Kutikana came to him and expressed the wish to go forth under him as a monk. But Kaccāna, seeing perhaps that the householder was not yet ready to take such a big step, discouraged him with the words, "Difficult, Sona, it is to sleep alone, to eat one meal a day, and to observe celibacy for as long as life lasts. While remaining a householder, you should apply yourself to the Buddha's teachings, and at the proper times you may sleep alone, eat one meal a day, and observe celibacy." So with these words, Sona's enthusiasm for ordination subsided. And sometime later, however, the urge was rekindled and he approached the elder again with the same request. And a second time, Kaccāna discouraged him, and a second time, Sona's desire for ordination abated. And when Sona approached for the third time, Mahākaccāna gave him the going forth, the papaccā, and the initial ordination as a novice samanera. So during the Buddha's time, it seems to have been customary to grant both ordinations in immediate succession to mature men who were already endowed with faith in the Dhamma and were acquainted with the teachings. Nowadays, it's split. So they take the papaccā first, and then the ordination as a samanera later. Oh, here it's explained. Sorry. Let's read. The novice ordination would first be given, and then right afterwards, the high ordination, the upasampada, and making the postulant a bhikkhu, a full member of Sangha, like immediately. But nowadays, it's like once they first become the samanera, there's a certain number of years. I can't remember exactly. So they have to be a novice samanera, wear white. It's not just for monks, bhikkhus, also for nuns. For a certain number of years, I can't remember exactly if it's 3 or 5. And then once they complete that period, then they can seek for the higher ordination to be a fully fledged bhikkhu or bhikkhuni. But during that time, I think because the early parts of the Buddha's dispensation, because a lot of them through the Buddha's guidance gain enlightenment. So logically it makes sense. Yeah. But at the time the above incident took place, Avantī was short of monks, being a region quite far from the Buddha's own missionary rounds and from the other centers of Buddhist activity. So according to the disciplinary regulations that were still in effect, the higher ordinations had to be performed by a chapter of at least 10 bhikkhus. I think now it's still the same. But such was the situation in Avantī that the Venerable Mahākaccāna could not easily find even 9 other bhikkhus to confer the high ordination on Sona. It was only 3 years later that the elder could, with trouble and difficulty, convene an assembly of 10 bhikkhus from different places in the region to give Sona the high ordination. When Sona had completed his first rains retreat as a bhikkhu, a keen desire arose in him to pay a visit to the Buddha. He had heard many times the highest praise of the Blessed One, his Lord and refuge, yet he had never seen the Master face to face. And now the desire to pay homage to the Buddha in person had become irresistible. So he went to his preceptor, which would have been Venerable Mahākaccāna, to ask for his permission to make the long journey to Savatthi, where the Buddha was residing. So not only did Mahākaccāna applaud his disciple's request, but he asked Sona to convey to the Buddha and appealed that certain monastic regulations be relaxed to suit the different social and geographical conditions that prevailed in Avantī and in other border regions. Now, when Sona came to the Buddha and explained Venerable Mahākaccāna's petition, the master readily agreed. First, to determine which districts should count as border regions, the Buddha defined the boundaries of the middle country, wherein the original regulations were to remain binding. And then he announced a revised version of the rules that were applied in the border regions, though not in the middle country. And so it does seem like, again, quite contrary to what some people might think. Even during the Buddha's time, the Buddha was, depending on the situation, right? What is the situation at that time? Should some regulations be relaxed? Should other new regulations come to be? Right? Because in the beginning, early days of the Buddha's dispensation, there were not this many Vinaya rules. And then later on, they got added and added because there were problems that arose. So the number of regulations, I think, needs to be understood, or Vinaya or rules needs to be understood, that it's not there as like some kind of commandment or something like that. But essentially, it is there for harmonious practice, harmonious lifestyle, harmonious perspective, essentially the Noble Eightfold Path, and being able to walk that Noble Eightfold Path in the most efficient and effective manner. Remember, the Buddha is not a time waster. So whatever rules that he laid out, I'm pretty sure he would have thought about it in alignment with the Noble Eightfold Path and how these regulations could help assist us as practitioners to walk that path, to lead our lives according to that path, so that we attain the highest form of achievement in terms of our mind states in the quickest possible manner. Also, that's what I personally think. I could be wrong, but just from an analytical perspective, let's say, from my analytical perspective, I believe the Buddha, well, early on, while he was a bodhisattva and practicing in the cave and then practicing under the Bodhi tree, it was very clear that his primary objective was always to seek out what is the path leading to enlightenment, or he didn't even call it enlightenment. What is the path to end all suffering? That was his main ultimate goal. His entire life activity was nothing but focused on finding what is the key solution to end all suffering. That was it. So in that manner, I think, and again, this is just a personal observation, he would have devised, let's say, right, a framework and ground rules supporting that framework to help us or to guide us to attain that end of suffering in the quickest, most possible, effective and efficient manner, right? Makes sense, no? Okay, so these revised rules are the following. A high ordination would not require 10 bhikkhus, but could now be given by chapter of 5, one of whom must be an expert in the Vinaya, the monastic discipline. So it makes sense. So the Buddha said, okay, you don't need 10, you can reduce to 5, but one of the 5 must be a Vinaya expert, knows his stuff. Okay. Monks are allowed to use sandals with thick linings as the ground in those regions is rough and hard on the feet. So I'm assuming there's probably something, I'm not an expert in Vinaya, so I'm assuming there's something in the Vinaya that says simple sandals or whatever, just basic. But I guess, some people that live in, let's say, some of these mountainous regions, they're very rough. And so if you have very basic sandals, you imagine, let's say in modern day, yeah, we're not monks, let's say, but we like to go hiking. And if you go to some place where you're going hiking and you try and wear slippers while going to hike, versus wearing proper hiking shoes, there is a big difference, right? Makes sense. Monks are permitted to bathe frequently, as the people of Avantī attach great importance to bathing. And this could be due to the weather conditions are different or the culture is different, whatever it is. So again, it shows here the Buddha is not, very, he's agile. For him, the ultimate really is how do we balance harmonious lifestyle, harmonious perspective, have a very balanced view of how to lead our lives, because ultimately, quickest possible way to end suffering and all suffering, not just our suffering, all suffering. Sheepskins, goat skins, etc. could be used as coverlets. Uh, Maybe in those places it was cheaper or more readily available, I don't know. Robes could be accepted on behalf of a monk who has left the district. And the 10 days period during which, under rule, an extra robe could be kept would begin only when the robe actually reaches his hands. Okay, so these are very detailed Vinaya rules, and it's probably related to weather or distance, or as mentioned earlier, difficulty in having enough um, qualified senior bhikkhus or monks who are experts in the Vinaya, etc. Yeah. So nowadays, of course, we probably don't have this issue so much because we're all connected with the wonders of technology, um, not just aeroplanes, etc. In fact, I'm curious, if the Vinaya talks about 10 monks being present um, for higher ordination upasampada. I'm wondering if it can be done through Zoom, hey? Different countries. Um, but nowadays we're also accessible, and there's so many. Buddhism has spread far and wide. But yeah, supposing somebody in, I don't know, Antarctica wants to be ordained, I'm just probably, maybe not Antarctica, okay, somewhere very far and remote in the country or something like that. And it's very hard to get 10. It's inconvenient. It's not impossible. I suppose it can be arranged, but it's probably inconvenient. It will cost quite some money, transportation wise, etc. So I don't know. Would Zoom be allowed? No idea. Interesting, no? Okay. Let's see. Various incidents. Just quickly scrolling through to see how long this is, because I don't know if we have time for this today. This is a fairly long one. Shall we leave that reading to the next time? Would that be okay? Various incidents. What do people say? Those that have doubting. What do you think so far?
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's a beautiful reading. Thank you very much indeed, May.
Thank you, Madam Nanda. Sorry, I think I digressed quite a bit today. I don't know why.
It's very interesting anyway.
I tend to have this habit of connecting patterns. Even when I work, when I think, when I teach, when I read. Um, and a lot of times when I practice, I just out of curiosity, I would think, hmm, yes, I know during the Buddha's time, right? It was like this, like this, like this. But during the Buddha's time, there were no aeroplanes, there was no internet, um, no telephone, no social media, no instant noodles. Yeah. In terms of even, how we cook, right? So when we read about, there was this question, I think, I remember one of the talks that Venerable Sister Kema, she was reading I think it was the Anathapindika Sutta, the one that where in the Majjhima Nikaya, the one where Anathapindika was very sick, he was dying, and he requested Venerable Sariputta to come to give him a talk at his deathbed. Um, and Venerable Sariputta then, da 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 da, gave a whole talk, and then at the end, Anathapindika went, "Oh, brilliant! So wonderful is the teaching you just gave. I've never heard of it before." And then, there was a question to Venerable Sister came out going, "How is it possible that Anathapindika have not heard of that teaching before? He as a chief lay." Benefactor of the Sangha and the Buddha probably would have been exposed to uh, countless teachings, right? Similar to Venerable Ananda, right? And then I'm sitting there thinking, Venerable Sister Kema did mention, imagine Anathapindika is like the roadies that I got the word right now this time, like roadies in musicians in the band when they go on a tour, right? And when they go on a music tour in different states and different parts of the country, these roadies have to go first in advance because they have to set up stage and all the equipment for a music band actually is really expensive, and only specialized people are trained on how to set it up. And if you don't set it up correctly, you don't get the correct type of sound quality that come out. And in concerts, especially big ones, that is very important. Otherwise, people will, flip the table and go, "Hey, I paid $100, $200 and you gave me this kind of quality of sound." So these people actually played an important role, and their jobs actually are very stressful because of the responsibility and very tiring. So that was the kind of analogy that Venerable Sister Kema was trying to help us picture in terms of Anathapindika's role, because he oftentimes had to, if it was a large congregation of the Bhikkhu Sangha or some king from somewhere come and they bring us a group of Brahmins or whatever, right? And then I sit there and think, well, yeah, obviously in the text, because of all these finer details are left out, whether it's Anathapindika or whether it's oh, suddenly the name escapes me now. Visakha, right? Megara's mother, yeah. In the text it just says, okay, and then they went to prepare, one sentence. Now, this was 2,600 years ago. No technology, no rice cooker, no stove, no electricity, right? Can you imagine the amount of work just to get a group of people, even if they're not the ones cooking, they would have to be the ones supervising, right? Um, Prepare food, get the food, source the supply. We're talking about congregation of, let's say, a couple of hundred people, could be a few thousand people. Even in today's modern technology setup, ask anyone, who does events for a few hundred or 1,000 upwards, it's not an easy feat. There's a lot of planning involved. And then even if you've done it many, many times, even if you experience, you've got a good team behind you, it's still a lot of effort. So when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, it's true. They're probably busy running around behind the scenes, just doing all the stuff. And even if by the time they, do all this stuff, I remember because I used to volunteer in temple activities and temple events and stuff, right? And true enough, by the time we actually get to sit down, we're probably at the corner or somewhere behind, and we'll listen not to the full Dhamma talk, and we'll probably be physically tired anyway. So our mind state will not be in the full level of um, collectedness or focus to be able to really absorb what the Buddha is talking about. It really made me think, and empathize a little bit with Anathapindika, even at his deathbed, he's just like going, oh, so brilliant, this teaching. How come I never heard of it before? Even all those years that he supported, gave so much alms and money and everything to the Sangha. Yeah. Sorry, I diverted again. I remember really, it was one time I was part of a group of volunteers to support a novitiate program. Novitiate program is like a short-term upasampada, not upasampada. So yeah, samanera upasampada, but short-term. So then you'd have, let's say one, was it 200? Yeah, 200 people. Yeah, 200 people taking ordination. And then behind the scenes would be a team of us of about not many, I think maybe 10, 15 people. That would be, yeah, pretty much doing the running around. I remember so many times, I would miss the meals even by the time I'm like, oh, okay, I have time to eat now. I'd be like, oh, all the food's gone, and I have to go into the kitchen to see if there was leftovers somewhere. And because we were in a very different venue that none of us were used to, and the weather was, again, the participants weren't used to the weather. It was a bit harsher than usual. Lots of people got sick, and in the end, some of the participants ended up being volunteers themselves because within the participant group, there were a number of doctors, there were a number of nurses as well. I remember one of them, my friend, he was just a new young doctor. He ended up treating people full time instead of being able to almost full time. We had to send some people to the clinic next door, the Ayurvedic clinic next door, next to the temple where we were close by. We had to send some people to the Ayurvedic clinic and then get some of the participating doctors and nurses, whoever had some form of clinical background. We were that desperate. I remember it was really hectic, but really fun. So yeah, and then when I think of people like Anathapindika, Visakha, I even Venerable Ananda, I really empathize with them. I'm nowhere near what they did, obviously, but even with technology, it's difficult. Without technology, I cannot imagine. But I'm sure they had brilliant teams working alongside as well. Anyway, again, I digress. What is wrong with me today? I'm so sorry. Okay, we shall gather again next Sunday as usual. I don't know yet what we will do next Sunday. We will see. I think a lot of people are a bit busy lately, but we'll see. We'll see. Um, and if no one's available, then yes, we can continue various incidents. Okay? So I'll leave it there and stop talking. Unless anyone would like to share or anything, has any questions or some favorable, I don't know, something positive learnings this past week. No? Okay. Then let us share some merits. Mm, okay. Do. Let's share merits. I will share the screen. Share. All right. So let us share merits together. May suffering ones be suffering free, and the fear-struck fearless be. May the grieving shed all grief, and may all beings find relief. May all beings share these merits that we have thus acquired for the acquisition of all kinds of happiness. May beings inhabiting space and earth, devas and nagas of mighty power, share these merits of ours. May they long protect the Buddha's dispensation. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Alrighty. Hope I didn't bore you all to death. Anyway, take care. Have a good week. And we'll come together again next Sunday, okay? Take care. Bye-bye.